This PowerPoint covers male hormones and reproductive physiology. Sperm and testosterone production are the main processes of male endocrine hormonal function, and it must be balanced. There must be a balance between the amount of testosterone produced and the amount of sperm produced. If there's balance, the male physiology is healthy. If there's not a balance, the male physiology has a problem somewhere. Sperm and testosterone production do continue throughout life, but they may decline in geriatric years. Spermatogenesis is production of sperm. It occurs in the Sertoli cells, but more specifically, it occurs in between the Sertoli cells, which make up the seminiferous tubules located within the testes. Spermatogenesis begins with mitosis of spermatogonia, also known as stem cells or germ cells or gametes. This occurs within the Sertoli cells, or better yet, kind of in between them. The job of Sertoli cells is to protect and nurture these gametes. The production involves producing two identical cells containing 46 chromosomes each through mitotic division. One of the cells, we'll call her type A, daughter cells, will remain in the basal lamina, which is the outer rim or cortex of the seminiferous tubule, and it'll stay there to grow and divide again another day. The other daughter cell, which will be a primary spermatocyte, will be pushed towards the lumen. The next phase of spermatogenesis is meiosis, and meiosis is specific for gametes, and it also requires the presence of testosterone. That type B primary spermatocyte will divide again, and then it'll form two secondary spermatocytes with 46 chromosomes each. Those secondary spermatocytes will then divide again and create four unique spermatotids with 23 chromosomes each. So it'll end up with four unique daughter cells, and those cells will have 23 unique chromosomes each. Now, after spermatogenesis, we enter the phase of spermiogenesis. This occurs close to the seminiferous tubule lumen. These baby spermatids will develop into spermatozoa. So this is where they get their unique shape. They'll form the acrosome cap, they'll elongate, they'll have excess cytoplasm extracted from them as part of the elongation process. They'll form their tail, their head, and then they're released into the lumen. So these are baby sperm. So I want you to think of it that way. When a baby is born, a healthy baby will have its head, body, 2 arms, 2 legs, hands, feet, fingers, and toes. It has all its parts, but it's still a baby and needs to grow up. So spermatogenesis is the process of birthing, if you will, baby sperm that have all their parts. Now here I've jumped right from spermatogenesis and spermiogenesis into the composition of sperm, and that's because sperm makes up 10% of semen. Spermatozoa or sperm, again, make 10%. Prostatic fluid composes about 30%, and it contains buffers, clotting factors, and plasminogen. And seminal fluid makes up the bulk of semen. It's about 60% of semen. It contains fructose, fibrinogen, and prostaglandins. And mucus makes up just a teeny percent of the semen. Now we're going to talk about these individual characteristics of semen, starting with sperm again. So what is sperm? It's also known as spermatozoa or sperm, and it has 3 distinct parts: a head, a body, a tail. The head contains the nucleus that has the DNA. It is covered by an acrosome cap, and this cap contains enzymes needed to penetrate the zona pellucida of the egg. Without the cap, without the enzyme, the sperm is useless. It will not get into the egg and not be able to fertilize it. The midpiece, or the body, is the area of the sperm that has the mitochondria, which is essential for energy. These sperm have to work very hard to get to their target, and they have to swim, and they need energy to get there. And flagellum, or the tail, is the structure that provides the motility that allows them to swim to reach their target, which is a female egg. And the purpose of this is fertilization And fertilization only occurs when the nucleus of the sperm unites with the nucleus of the egg. Sperm is highly sensitive to pH levels. It requires a pH of approximately 6.5 for its development and its survival. The pH of the female reproductive tract is really acidic. It can be 3.5 to 4.0 pH. An acidic environment is hostile to sperm. It can kill it. Anything below pH 6 is deadly. If you look on the right, this image is actually an advertisement for Tri-X condoms because they say they have a pH of 3.8 to 4.5 pH, so that they not only protect from sperm getting out, but they kill all the sperm too. Sperm is also highly sensitive to temperature. In order for sperm to develop and survive, it requires a temperature 1.5 to 2.0 degrees Celsius cooler than body core temperature. That's why they're located in sacs outside of the body cavity. If they weren't outside, they can't produce. So also environments. I have an example here. It shows skinny jeans. Anything that's going to generate way too much heat around the scrotum is going to affect the spermatogenesis. Sperm is produced in the testes. I've already mentioned that, specifically the Sortelli cells within the seminiferous tubules. Now that's where they are baby sperm. Remember I talked about how the sperm are babies when they're released into the lumen of the seminiferous tubules. Well, if you look at the anatomy of the testes on the right, you'll see that from the seminiferous tubules, they go to a structure called the res testes, and then they go into the epididymis. The epididymis is where the sperm mature. All right, so they have all their parts, so it's not where they get new parts, but this is where they grow up. So this is like sperm school. They grow up and they mature, and you can see how it's highly convoluted. When you have any kind of convoluted structure in anatomy, it's just to increase more surface area or to get more structure into a tighter place. And as you can see, as you get away from the entry point of where the sperm would enter the epididymis, and you get closer and closer to the structure called the vas deferens, you can see that the lumen gets larger of the epididymis. Then it goes into the vas deferens, where most of the sperm is stored. Sperm can be stored for about a month, but then after that, old sperm is reabsorbed. The vas deferens can store and will supply about 10% of the sperm that is found in semen. Prostatic fluid accounts for approximately 20 to 30% of semen. It is produced by the prostate gland. It is a milky substance that contains buffers that alter the pH of the female environment, which we learned is very acidic and which is hostile to sperm. These buffers will extend the lifespan of sperm about 3 days in the female reproductive tract. It also contains clotting enzymes that convert fibrinogen into fibrin, and plasminogen, that is an enzyme that dissolves the fibrin, freeing the clotted sperm. You see, sperm do the strangest thing. As soon as they enter the female reproductive tract, they slam against the vagina wall and get stuck. These poor little guys are terrified. They have no idea why they can't move. So naturally, they do what you would expect sperm would do in this situation. They start talking to each other. "Hey, Vinny, what's going on? I'm stuck here. I can't even move my tail." "I don't know, Nico. I'm stuck too." "What do you think happened, Vinny? Do you think the boss pissed her off and she won't let us in?" "Oh, man, Nico, I hope not. I've waited my whole life for this opportunity. I can't end like this." As time passes, the boys get tired and the conversation dwindles. You see, by now, they've used up all the energy they gained from the fruit snacks they got at Jack's meet and greet before they started their journey. After about 10 minutes, which is an eternity to a little sperm guy, Nico lifts his head to take one last look at his brothers all along the wall. In the distance, he sees someone coming towards him. At first, he thinks it's a mirage, but as the image gets closer, he recognizes who it is. "Hey, Vinny! Vinny, wake up! Cousin Jenny's coming over to us. So you see, Jenny is short for plasminogen. What? Oh, Nico, you're just hallucinating. No, really, look. Hey, Nico. Hey, Vinny. How's it going, boys? It's not going, Jenny. Me and Vinny here and all the boys, we've been stuck for hours. What are you doing here? And how comes you ain't stuck? Well, boys, the big P sent me over. He knew you guys would get stuck, and he sent me with the keys to set you free. Jenny, unlock me first. I'm the smallest, and I need a head start. I'm sorry, Nico, but it doesn't work that way. As soon as I unlock one sperm, you're all set free at the same time. Oh, well, it doesn't matter anyway. I'm so tired I can't even swim. I don't have the energy to do nothing. I'll probably just drown. Listen, Nico. Semi set up snack stations all the way from here through the land of Oz. Make sure you pick up some fruit as soon as I let you go, and you might have enough energy to make it through the tube. Thanks, Jenny. You're the best. Seminal fluid produced by the seminal vesicles account for approximately 60% of semen. It contains fructose, which provides the fuel for energy for ATP production. It has fibrinogen, which is the precursor to fibrin, which was used to clot the sperm, making it stick against the wall of the vagina, and it also has prostaglandins. You see, in the normal situation, the uterus has peristalsis contractions that push stuff out of the uterus, which comes quite handy when a female is still menstruating to push the sloughed off endometrium out of the uterus. Well, when you don't want to push out the sperms, so the seminal fluid has these prostaglandins that reverse the peristalsis of the uterus that helps assist propelling them towards the fallopian tube. This effect lasts about 10 minutes, after which the sperm then are pushed back out of the uterus by backflow or by normal peristalsis. This is one of the theories behind the sperm clotting against the vaginal wall to give those prostaglandins enough time to reverse the peristalsis, and by the time that has reversed, then the sperm are freed from the clotting factors and can be assisted by the reverse peristalsis to the fallopian tubes. Semen also contains a teeny tiny amount of mucus. This mucus is secreted by the bulb urethral glands that's located on either side of the urethra, and its purpose is to neutralize any acidic urine that might be in the urethra, and it also lubricates the end of the penis. The mixing of semen's contents. Sperm, seminal fluid, and prostatic fluid are kept separate until ejaculation. During ejaculation, sperm and seminal fluid mix in the ejaculatory duct, which I refer to as Jack's place in my story. Then the prostate will undergo smooth muscle contraction, which will squeeze the prostatic fluid into the prostatic urethra, which is really right next to the ejaculatory duct, and then all the contents will mix together before they head on their journey through the urethra. Fertilization typically occurs in the ampulla of the fallopian tube, or the first 1/3 of it. Fertilization, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, results when the nucleus or the DNA of a sperm unites with the nucleus and DNA of an egg. The fertilization window. Sperm are viable about 3 days. I mentioned that mostly because of the buffers. An ovum or egg, a mature egg, is viable for about 2 days. This allows for a 3-day window for fertilization. 1 day before ovulation, if there is sperm in the reproductive tract, 1 day before ovulation, it's ready to go. Then you have the day of ovulation, and you can have a day after of ovulation because the egg will still be viable. And as you can see on the right, Vinny and Nico are neck and neck. The hypothalamus regulation of sperm. Well, the hypothalamus will secrete gonadotropin-releasing hormone, and it will bind to gonadotropes on the anterior pituitary. It'll stimulate the anterior pituitary to release LH and FSH. In the absence of gonadotropin-releasing hormone, almost no LH or FSH is released, but a little can release without it. LH role in regulation of sperm. LH will bind to interstitial Leydig cells. It'll stimulate the production of testosterone, and testosterone is needed to stimulate the production of sperm. LH levels are influenced by negative feedback to the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. Typical feedback: high levels shut it off, low levels will turn it on. Testosterone's role in spermatogenesis. The stimulation, growth, and division of spermatogonia, or germ cells, requires testosterone. T levels are influenced by negative feedback, as I mentioned before, from the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. FSH regulation of sperm. FSH stimulates spermatogenesis. What it does is FSH will cause the Sortelli cells to release androgen binding protein, ABP. You should see that in the diagram. This ABP will bind to the testosterone that the interstitial cells produced. That's very close to the seminiferous tubules, and it will bind to it and hold it in the vicinity. So it basically just like reaches out, grabs the testosterone, and pulls it into the Sortelli cells. Then this testosterone will stimulate the mitosis and meiosis of spermatogenesis, because testosterone's primary function is to stimulate protein synthesis. It is a steroid hormone, so it is going to go into the cytoplasm, and it will stimulate their growth. Regulation of FSH. Follicle-stimulating hormone levels are influenced also by negative feedback to the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. But its release is also influenced by a hormone called inhibin. Inhibin regulation of sperm. Inhibin hormone is synthesized and secreted by Sortelli cells in response to high level of sperm. This controls spermatogenesis by inhibiting FSH and gonadotropin-releasing hormone, but it has the strongest effect on the anterior pituitary to inhibit secretion of FSH. So this is a situation where the body has not left it up to just feedback. When the Sortelli cells are getting a little tired of making sperm, when they say, okay, we've had enough, in addition to negative feedback, they can release their own hormone that will quickly shut off FSH and kind of stop that process. Testosterone is the major hormone for males. It's responsible for the male characteristics and reproduction capability. Testosterone origin. Secretion begins during embryonic development. Around the 7th week of development, the genital ridges of the male fetus begin to secrete testosterone. By week 8, testosterone is secreted by the fetal testes. This secretion is responsible for developing the baby's male body characteristics such as its penis and scrotum. Cryptorchism or cryptorchism or cryptorchidism, I have no idea, I'm sorry. It's undescended testicles. It's typically unilateral, and 10% can be bilateral, and it's more common in premature births. It is due to low levels of testosterone if all other conditions are normal, such as the normal size of the testes, large enough inguinal canals, so the baby's making enough thyroid hormone. It's got enough other hormones. It will need the testosterone to allow it to descend. Surgery will be required in these male babies if the testes does not descend by about age 4 months. Testosterone and puberty. Testosterone increases secretion around puberty. Actually, in prepubescent males, Testosterone will gradually increase about 3 years before any signs of puberty is noticed, and then it takes about 3 full years for the increase of testosterone for the actual effects of puberty to be noticed. Testosterone is responsible for the adult primary and secondary male sex characteristics. Some of the male sex characteristics the primary ones are the enlargement of the penis and the testes and the scrotum. But some secondary ones are the male distribution of body hair, enlargement of the larynx leading to a masculine or deeper voice. It increases the thickness of their skin, but it also increases production of sebaceous glands, especially in the face, which can lead to adolescent acne. Another very important thing that testosterone does for males is it increases muscle mass. The secondary characteristic of increasing muscle mass is the primary reason why male athletes develop more muscle mass than their counterpart female athlete. For example, a male and female of the same age and the same height, the same weight, who do the same kind of exercise, after puberty, the male will increase in muscle mass and the females will be limited because the female doesn't produce testosterone, or at least not in a normal situation. Testosterone in bone. Testosterone strengthens bone by increasing the bone matrix and causing calcium retention. It specifically affects the male pelvis by narrowing and lengthening the pelvic outlet. This type of structure greatly increases the strength and load-bearing capacity of the male pelvis. Testosterone and height. Testosterone is responsible for growth spurts. It can be responsible for growing pains in the legs of the young men. It is also responsible for fusion of the epiphyseal plate, so it determines the height of the male. In fact, if a male produces too much testosterone too soon in their life, they can end up having a short stature. Testosterone also increases the number of red blood cells in circulation. That allows males to carry more oxygen to their structures, which will give them more endurance. It also has a slight increase in reabsorption of sodium and therefore water by the kidneys, which is actually needed for the increased amount of red blood cells they have in circulation. This will cause an increase overall of 5 to 10% of extracellular fluid, but because of the increased muscle mass, they can manage it. It increases protein synthesis. As I mentioned before, that is the main underlying effect of testosterone on all target cells. If you remember from Introduction to Endocrinology, I used the same diagram for steroid hormones because testosterone's a steroid. That means it's lipid soluble and it can go right through the plasma membrane and it will bind with the receptor in the cytoplasm. And then that receptor hormone complex will enter the nucleus and bind to a specific hormone element on the DNA and stimulate the transcription and the translation process of protein synthesis. As the male ages, the testosterone secretion decreases. It affects all functions of testosterone and it can affect libido. This causes symptoms similar to female menopause, such as hot flashes. It's not a pathology as long as there are balance between the level of testosterone being produced and sperm production. Whenever there is an imbalance, there is a problem. For example, very high levels of testosterone and low sperm production can indicate testicular cancer.